If you do have any problems seeing, just follow the light, just the general direction. Now, where are you out of?
Nebraska.
Nebraska. Nice. Now, are you all out in the country or?
Super rural. Yeah.
Nice.
About an hour north of Omaha. So
Nice. Is that farming or just rural?
we were farming, like grew up right down the road from where I lived, but we're not in farming.
Gotcha.
You have to have money to be in farming,
Yeah,
and
it's
sadly that's
yeah.
that's
There
not
aren't very
us.
many family institutions doing farm anymore. Now it's really
No.
major operations. Yeah, I grew up in Southern Oregon, and same thing. I mean, the big operations did all the farming. There was lots around us, but we were just poor country bumpkins. So.
Yeah. Well, my parents just moved to Southern
Oh,
Oregon,
really? What
so
part?
which is like right along the California
Near the
border, like
coast.
right on the coast,
On the
like
coast. Yeah.
Brookings.
Yep. Brookings. Yep.
So
Yeah, nowhere near me. I'm about 2 hours inland. I'm kind of near Crater Lake, or at least I was.
okay.
I've been in Austin for a good 20 years now, but yeah. So, well, let me kick us off. Welcome to the conversation where we unpack the wild, interconnected chaos shaping our world, including the population's decline and all the reasons for it. Your host, Joe Edgar and Ethan Krok. Today's guest is Linsey Knerl, a seasoned professional with 20 years of homeschooling experience with her 6 children. In her book, Homeschool Hacks, she provides practical guidance for working parents balancing careers and home education. Lindsay leverages her unique dual perspective as a homeschooler and a marketing professional to help families navigate home education challenges. Thanks for joining us today, Lindsay.
Yeah.
And hopefully Crocky jumps in a little bit. He's having some daddy time. So he said if he gets away, he can pop in. But it's early morning for him. He's over on the Gold Coast, Australia. So he has to do dad stuff in the morning. So yes, my youngest is now 18, so you might say I'm past, and his is 18 months. So
Oh wow.
similar. Now, you have 6 kids.
Yes, 6.
What are they? What's their age gaps between the oldest and
Oh,
youngest?
well, 27 all the way down to 11. But I told my husband this morning, after fixing a computer, helping a kid pay for a book for school, helping another kid log into something they couldn't log into, dealing with a laundry issue, and I think like multiplication, I felt like I've never been more in the midst of parenting than now. And most of them should be doing quite a bit of it on their own. So,
Yes, I can only imagine. I mean, I have 4 kids, but I definitely didn't deal with. I think a mom who also does homeschooling is an entirely different level of parenting. So, and none of your kids have gone to public school, as I read, right?
nope, never. One went inside to take an ACT, and that was like the closest they went to it.
That's like it's like an evil place to step into, unsacred ground. So,
They were just confused by it, I think. They're like, what?
what
Like,
is this
it just
place?
didn't make sense. It
Large
didn't make
building. All
sense.
these kids get together
Yeah.
for what? So how? What did you grow up in Nebraska?
Yeah. I'm actually in the small town, well, outside of it, that I grew up in and lived in, and same school down the road that, I went to. It was largely part of our decision to homeschool. Not
J-
negatively so much. It's just
Really?
I saw I saw bigger things, I guess, and I wanted bigger things for my kids, and I thought homeschooling might be that way. So,
Gotcha. Now, so you went to public school right there in the same
oh
town that
yeah,
you're going to now.
hmm
So those schools they went to
yeah,
take the SATs. You roamed those halls at one time.
yeah. I did. I same school K-12. Rode the little bus
Oh, it's
and did
one
the
building for all 12. It's that rule. Oh man,
yep,
that's pretty
yeah,
rough.
200 total kids. So yeah,
Okay, so everybody in one building. Nice. And what's a normal
yeah,
senior class there? I mean, that's got to be only like 15, 20 students.
20-ish. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we've seen, well, kind of the theme of your show, right? We've seen less kids
Exactly.
graduate,
That's
less kids
exactly.
attend as time has gone on. So I'm sure it's a smaller class now.
Yep. So what about your husband? He same story, same area?
Yeah, almost like our stories are so parallel. Only he's other side of the state, so a little more rural. Like fashion
More
trends came around maybe 8 months later. It was like slightly slower, but
school by default because there was no school.
he had a tiny school as well, better in sports than we were,
The
but
hour-long bus ride.
it was just, I think it was just, we had a lot of those schools that combined. We were kind of the last of the kids where every town had a school, and then you started getting like the hyphenated names like Anselmo, Murda, Takema, Herman. Like you have to combine the schools because there's not enough kids to be in a school by
So
themselves.
every school's in like 5 towns. So
yeah. So he was kind of the
so
last
instead
of
of
that. And
panthers,
we
you have
had
to be more like leopards because you've got all kinds of school stripes and that. I gotcha.
yes, we have a giant school just built. They're still building onto these schools with less students, so the buildings aren't getting smaller. There's just fewer kids attending.
Now, when you and your husband were dating, or however this worked out, but was it ever an early conversation to be like, hey, I do not want to go to public school. I want our kids to go to homeschool?
Yes, and that was because we both went to college to be teachers.
Oh, wow.
And my husband, I remember him handing me a book, and it was kind of about, just the goings on and just how he was like, I don't know that I can do this. He had switched actually to become a business major and was still finishing school when I met
He's
him.
on
He was working.
That's 2 sides of the spectrum. Is like the really poor
Yeah.
degree or like going after money degree. Is that where he's like, if I
Well,
one or
and
the
he's
other. As soon as he met you, he's like, oh, you're going to be a teacher. I better do business.
Well, and I had already dropped out of college. I actually had gotten married previously as a very young student. That didn't work out. Had a 4-year-old when I met him, so we had kind of instant family there. And I was not part of the reason I didn't want to go back to school is I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just knew teaching wasn't it. But I didn't know at the time it wasn't teaching that I had a problem with. It was the large amount of time spent doing classroom management. And I didn't want to manage other people's children. I just wanted to like read great books and do art and music and learn useful things. And I was taught in the first year of college that you're going to spend a lot of time doing other things. And that really turned me off, I think, just to the idea of it.
Yeah, the whole country has kind of leaned into this teach to the test, as they say. And, which means basically you're trying to get achievement tests because some of your pay is ultimately, tagged. Benchmarked off of that test, so they lean into doing that. So you and your husband, you get together, you already have one kid. Walk me through like the decision, say, okay, we know we're going to homeschool. We want to do this, but I mean, you were kind of before the time because I did look up some stats on homeschooling, and I saw here in Austin, my kids have had a mix. They've all been a lot of private school. But then my last 2 have wanted to be in public school because it's bigger and they meet their friends in soccer and they want to go. So my daughter kind of went there. So through COVID, we noticed the Austin High here had 1,000 less students after COVID. And numerous schools were having this. And everybody's like, where are all the students? And it turns out homeschooling has more than doubled in this country. So homeschooling is a large beast. It used to be about 2 to 3%, but now it makes up about 6 to 8% of all students in the country. So it's becoming quite a presence. So how did you venture into this? You're kind of before the fad, but how did you ultimately get your feet wet? Because it's one thing to say, oh, I'm going to homeschool. It's another thing to actually have to do it.
So it's interesting because we get these ideas, we feel like they match our values or they match our vision of like what our life would be like if we could engineer it ideally. And then we lack like the people that are doing it, how exactly we want to do it. So we were in a small town. There was not a homeschooling family to be found, right? So all our neighbors were sending their kids to the local school, which means we were instantly like kind of locked out of a lot of the community things. So we kind of knew what we were trading to do this. But my daughter had just come out of a preschool / daycare situation when I was working single mom in Omaha. And it was just
It's like
problems like every day.
Preschool drama already happening. It's like
it was just
preschool
so
breakup.
much.
Oh.
Just like, oh, this kid bit and this kid hit and this kid, and oh, this kid has lice and now we have to deal with this. And I just remember thinking, this shouldn't be so complicated.
Now she
They're
could bite her
5.
siblings.
Right. So my husband was working nights and
Oh,
weekends
man.
as a direct support worker for adults with developmental disabilities, and I was working like an executive assistant job during the day, 9 to 5. And we're like,
You're like,
one of us is
hey,
always
we
here.
should become teachers too. It's
We
like,
should
there's so much free
homeschool,
time.
and we could just, forget this, I guess, dilemma. Just try it a year. We got like workbooks from the dollar store, and we read books, and we watched educational shows, and we went to library story
So she would have
time.
been
And
like kindergarten, first grade-ish, right
yeah,
in there. Okay.
yep. And in Nebraska, compulsory attendance didn't actually start. Like legally, you didn't have to be accounted for till 7. So technically,
She was missing.
like we knew socially we would be like, why is your kid not in school? And we got it a lot, but the state wasn't going to like come after us if we didn't make a decision. So we tried 1 year, then we started having the boys. We have 5 boys together. Kind of boom, 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 just
You
every
got the
18
one
months
girl,
for
and she's got a lot of
got
brothers to
all the
follow her
boys.
around.
And it's just like we were doing life, and we were enjoying it, and it just seemed like we had so much less complication, and my kid was learning and doing really well. And so we just kind of did like the contract renewal. Well, we'll keep doing it till it works, and we'll renew the contract. And every year we just were like, this is still working, right? And we had people in our church and our community who were homeschooling, but I wouldn't necessarily say they were the inspiration or the guidance, because there were a lot of things I think were kind of holdover from that 80s, 90s. The people that pioneered homeschooling, and God bless them, like they did the hard work and they made sure we weren't all thrown in jail. But there were some kind of holdover ideologies and cultural things that I wasn't, I don't know. I was a little more libertarian, a little more free thinking, and like, my ideals. And so some of the rules on the structure just didn't fit, didn't jive. So we kind of got our own curriculum and our own books and decided how we wanted to do it. And I'm highly technological. Like I love technology. I feel like there's a place for it in our lives in a lot of ways. And so I'm not like scared of any one technology. And I find that some of that initial homeschooling community we were in was largely trying to avoid that. And since I work with technology,
tapping around here, so I hope to dig it deeper. Are you talking about kind of this Christian homeschool movement? Because it's a large movement that's kind of popped up, and so they have their own curriculum. They're like, no devices, avoid us from Satan. He's trying to make his way again. So this is, you're saying avoid. You're not so into the isolation, more just.
Well, and, I'm a Christian, so like I'll come out and say I'm a Christian, but like I also take my free will and my ability to discern what's right for my family super seriously. There might be people who it's really not a good idea to do a certain tool or curriculum, or it's just not good for them, or maybe that child is just not going to respond well, and so you wouldn't continue to use it.
So just to be clear, so we understand, are your kids yelling 6, 7 right now? Then are they
absolutely
up to
are.
So they're into TikTok enough to know that this is everybody knows and says they know what it means, but everybody at the same time sounds like they don't know what it means, because I have no clue. But my daughter's like, you wouldn't understand. I'm like, I don't understand. So.
They do, because they are funny. My kids are funny, and they do like to just do things just to do things. The other thing is, I grew up in the time of satanic panic in a non-Christian home. My husband grew up in a Christian home. So we have different, I guess, perspectives of what might be dangerous, or what that was, based on what our parents would have told us at the time. Our coming together has kind of created this, I would say, a little more relaxed, like, take things as they come, and find people who really know a lot about the topic, and, use our own discernment, trust ourselves a little bit, not just every time we see something on the news be freaking out. It takes more work, but I think it's kind of essential.
Now, are your kids, they're nerdy homeschooler, group, or would you say you already said they're kind of funny? They are. I mean, how do they act in a social gathering? Would they immediately just cling to each other, or are they pretty social? How do
No.
you balance that?
So they are their own people, and I think that's kind of like the thing. I get
I grew up.
mad
I
like
grew up in one of 13, so I know when you have siblings, it's
okay.
you.
Yeah, yeah.
You do have quite a few people to work with. So.
And you got the kid who would never come out from the book he's reading. It doesn't matter if he's homeschooled or not homeschooled. I was that kid, right? So I was in a public school, and you could have looked at me and said, what's wrong with that kid, right? No friends, reading all the time, saying weird, inappropriate things. That was me. And my parents didn't have to homeschool me to make me that way. So then when I see those kids in homeschool community, I think maybe their parents were just smart enough to go, they're not going to do great in a public school. Let's get them out. The homeschooling didn't make them that way. But then they
Good
do have
point.
to, do have to work extra hard to give that kid the opportunity. I look at my children and I go, if we don't work a little bit on this, that one's going to be weird, right? Or weirder than what would be, I'm just being honest.
Well,
And we say, let's get into some activities and force a little bit more interaction than
I'll
what
kind
we've
of
been
I'll
doing.
kind of only go to your point that today public school is full of a whole bunch of kids who don't talk to each other. They have social anxiety and they text. So it seems like our entire society has become what we used to think of as the homeschooler. So
Right.
no matter where you go, maybe it's the more social place to be is staying home. Do any of your kids do sports? How do you manage kind of because I'm in Texas. Football it seems like football drives the campus actually. You go to some of these schools and they have a better, stadium and football and aquatic center than, many of the other universities in other states.
Yeah, so we're Nebraska Cornhuskers. We've just got new stadium and finally serving beer and all that great stuff, So we're all about the football Friday night lights culture. But my kids, my daughter did volleyball and was fine
And still
at it.
does it
She
at the
didn't.
school? I mean, is that where?
No, she didn't.
Like a
None of my
club?
kids did college sports except speech and debate. We have some
Nice.
speechers, debaters, which I consider you can go. They went on scholarship.
But I mean, in
you can do
high
that.
school, they did the sports.
Yep.
Oh, so they could.
Not well. They didn't do physical sports. We did try some things. They ended up doing academic sports.
That's
That
gotcha.
ended up being
Oh
what
yes,
they wanted
yes,
to do.
definitely. We need to classify academic as a sport. I like it. I like how that was. Spelling bee, which I do watch almost every year, oddly enough, just because it's very interesting. But yeah. But do the schools allow any participation for homeschoolers to participate?
Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, every state's different. I think Nebraska's working right now to clarify some language around how many hours or classes. I think, it's kind of up to the school in a lot of ways, because just saying you can participate isn't the same as saying you can play, right? There are going to be bench sitters, and that's largely the coach's decision. I'm kind of the mind that we have almost every type of sport or activity in the homeschool world, and some of them are actually better.
Oh, wow.
I don't know.
And that's just, a whole group of them will get together and say, we're going to start a football league. And so we'll all
Yeah,
meet.
or they'll play, it's like club ball. I mean, when you think
Gotcha.
about it now, where is sports going? It's actually club ball, like travel ball. The people that are serious about it, a lot of them are like, okay, my kid's going to do the school event, but then we're also going to do travel ball or club ball. So it's kind of been pulled out of the schools for a while now for a lot of the really highly competitive kids. And it's not different for homeschool families. We actually, they'll play parochial teams. A lot of private schools will get together and decide to do it that way. And then we have leagues for, speech and debate has a couple national leagues, and they're a pipeline right into the colleges. So, it's not lack of opportunity. It just takes you getting on the internet and being like, what's around me, and paying the fees and the hotel bills and all that stuff that comes with that, and making a commitment. But
I mean,
definitely not lack
I
of
think
opportunity.
that part is pretty normal, because if your kid
Mhm.
plays a sport or something, you're going to travel. All right, you're going to get stuck with some of this. But a lot of what you do is not that normal and expensive. So I imagine it does cost you all a bit more, because, I mean, schools are doing this, have property taxes to help fund it. and now you all are taking on all this responsibility. So what kind of expenses do you end up seeing on a kind of an annual basis?
It's gotten a lot higher as we've gone along, and it's not because my expectations are higher as far as like, "Ooh, this is a more premium experience," or anything like that. It's that I'm a busy mom. I work, I'm running a business, and I need someone else to teach my children. The idea I'm gonna sit at the table and do a whole lot of teaching past, like, the very young ages where we're working on handwriting or
Does-
learning how to read and all
If I
that,
got you
that's
right,
not
does
gonna
that
happen.
mean you bring someone in to help teach?
No, online.
Ah, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so we kind of use the eclectic method, which is just a fancy way of saying mishmash. We source or curate the
Nice.
classes or the things we
So there's
like,
other
and
homeschoolers who are like doing something. So you're like, okay, you all teach physics because I don't know what it is, and I'll help.
no,
I'll help you do marketing.
we'll buy classes directly from, like, a
Oh,
private or umbrella school.
gotcha.
Either they're live or pre-recorded ones. We do dual enrollment with colleges, so my kids are getting college credits at the same time they're getting their high school credits. We do, just some I mean, there's just so many, curriculum providers now with video components, and also with if you look at colleges, a lot of them are just pre-recorded classes. A lot of the lectures aren't even live
Some of them
anymore.
should just be
So
pre-recorded classes. The guys
yeah,
say
yeah,
the same thing
so
over and over and boring us out. It's like,
so we really don't, you know, we don't have a subject or topic that, we can't go out and find somebody who taught it for 15 years in a higher level. I mean, there's no reason not to have the best of the best teaching your children, or at least somebody who's moderately passionate about it, which I can't say was the case for all the teachers I had in school.
a lack of passion. Smoke break anytime. So what about AI? Has AI fit in there where you can kind of almost have a tutor or someone to assist your kids as they learn, or is it not quite there?
Yeah, there are things available, and I've actually, looked at a lot of them, and I'm kind of reluctant to have that be a major component. I have taught my children how to use Perplexity, and Copilot responsibly for research, for just kind of mulling over ideas, for like, I'm not understanding this theorem, this math theorem. Can you explain it to me, like using a basketball metaphor? Like, that's a great example for a kid to learn how to use AI. And the computer for my kids is right in the middle of the family room where everyone can see on one of those giant gaming monitors that's like as big as, and
Yes.
so there's no funny stuff going on. Like, we can see.
Right.
So I guess I'm not worried they're just gonna like find something weird and
Mm,
stumble down some hole. Like, we're there,
gotcha.
and we have a pretty good open dialogue about things we see anyway. So that's something
Nice.
I've worked really hard to try to make sure my kids know, that there's nothing they can do or see
Right.
that's going to make me not like want to be their mom.
Right.
So that helps too, I think.
You could try to filter it all your best, but I think my kids hate me, so
Yeah.
I think it's out there no matter what. They'll find something to complain about eventually. So, but you said you have a 27. That's the
hmm
oldest. The oldest 27. Okay,
hmm
and I mean, where does she? And you must have a few that have. I mean, how many are still in the home now? You got some teens in the home? One or
Three
two?
in the
Three in the
home.
home?
Yeah, I have one heading to college next year, so they'll have three at one college.
Nice.
And then my daughter has been graduated for a while
And
and working.
what's the
So
college experience? I mean, I only know private school and public school now and trying to work with kids getting to college. Is it the same experience? I mean, I know they're high school and getting letters of recommendation. These are all in Texas. They have, if you land, it used to be the top 10%. Now it's the top 6%. You can automatically go to a state school, but small private homeschools wouldn't be included. So, I mean, what are some drawbacks, I guess, to the homeschooling versus are there any upsides to getting into college?
I would say for a time, and I don't know, I think COVID maybe changed a lot of this, is, there were some state schools that were like, yeah, we accept homeschoolers, but they made it kind of like the requirements were like, are you kidding me? I have to write out
Mm,
every book we read, and what, it's just like a lesson plan in reverse. And it was almost like the message was, We don't really want you. And I would have said to families at that time, listen when people tell you things, because there's a reason they're telling you this, and maybe your student will get a good scholarship or whatever, but maybe they're going to be hearing things. I don't know that I'd want to hear constantly that homeschoolers are a problem, or that they're sucking funds out of the public, whatever, like constantly. They're just, maybe unless it's a very specialized program that you want to do, you don't want to go to an institution that's just constantly bagging on you and your people and what you represent. But that's kind of changed, and I've even seen a lot of those schools, they're like desperate.
Does that
for
mean there is a
students.
popular college to kind of homeschoolers tend to go to, or?
There are some homeschool, that culture kind of we talked about a little, I hinted at earlier, that's kind of like the more Christian conservative homeschool
Gotcha.
funnel type schools. And they're great. I mean, people don't have problems getting jobs from there. Okay. I think the rigor is been great. They've gone on to, work for the government and lawyers and doctors and all the things. That's not a concern. I think where if you're looking for a specific STEM or engineering program, or my one son is art, which is kind of, some of the more conservative schools don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, because where do you decide? He likes that challenge of trying to make good art and honoring art, but also like interesting enough that people would want to engage with it, which is, going to be found at a more liberal arts school. We have had no problem getting into colleges.
Gotcha.
Like we have access to ACT, SAT, the CLT. If you've heard of that.
I don't know that one.
That's becoming more accepted in a lot of schools. I think Florida now accepts
the country's lonely timer. Is that what it is?
The classic learning
test. Okay.
So it's based on more classical. The texts are, great writers, not like a Bernie Sanders speech or something weird. You're like, and you're reading for context of, the time and the perspective, and it's a totally different type of test. And there's no way to, like, if I learn this certain way of doing math, I'm going to be able to game the test. It's like you really do have to be able to critically think about each component. So I've used that for my students. And then we've only applied for schools that accept it, which are all private liberal arts schools.
When you say your students, do you mean your kids only, or
my kids?
Other?
Yeah, my kids.
Okay.
They are.
I didn't know, because
yeah.
Are you also helping other homeschooling kids? Okay, gotcha.
No.
For your kids, yep.
But like University of Nebraska wouldn't accept that test.
Gotcha.
So that's not who we're taking it for.
No, they definitely have.
Just kind of depending on where you're going.
I think all the schools, even all the way up Harvard, Stanford, they all no longer require an SAT or an ACT. So now it's, if you do it, you can submit it. It's been, I think as my kids went through it all, they're like, I have to basically take it because they say it's recommended, but not required. So
yeah, and for homeschoolers, you kind of have that like extra, like I got to prove myself. And also I think if you get a certain score on like the math, you don't have to take that like remedial math class they make everyone take unless you can prove with your GPA, which we can create a GPA and give you a GPA, but there's still the onus on us to prove that
4.9.
Yeah. Although we've seen so much grade inflation in the high schools, I don't know that means anything to anybody anymore anyway. So
yeah, you bring up
definitely a
great point. It's like, what is the value of a high school diploma anymore? I mean, so I did look this up, but I was actually shocked because I personally don't think it is of much value. I think it's really lost a lot. I know when my own kids, again, when they went through COVID, what just made me so frustrated and disappointed was that they had to teach to the lowest denominator instead of teaching to the top. Instead of giving all kids opportunities, they made sure everyone equal. And that's where I think school creates a problem for me, at least. And that is my daughter, because someone may not have the same speed internet, nobody had to have their camera on. And then because not everybody has the ability to, meet office hours or ask the same questions, then the teachers had to be limited on what they could actually lecture and do. So what my daughter and son did is you would see them do it all the time. They would turn on their computer and go to sleep. And
Yeah.
I'd walk in and be like, what are you doing? Their computer's it's their class. And then you look on it and just the teacher's on, everyone else has their screen off. And the teacher's like trying to ask questions. And eventually the teachers kind of give up because they're bound to this thing. So for 2 years, it kind of went on like that to where I was like, all right, well, the teachers' unions are really fighting for this effort to make sure everyone has an equal playing field. But what they're doing is really disadvantaging those from having an opportunity, ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to drive. And I think that difference is give an opportunity to someone, and anyone who's willing to reach to their heights can take advantage of it. And so that disheartened me, I guess, on the public institution, because at the same time I had a son in a private school, and they were they were only out of school for a couple months before they were back in school. They did do some online stuff, but they were driving him constantly. So it was just like such a contrast. I was like, man, that really gives you the idea that it's like teachers unions seem to want to keep schools down. So I definitely fall into the vein, I think, that you're going with. But I looked, high school diploma will bring you about $946 more. Well, that's not true. The stat is on a weekly basis is $946 versus $734. And so it equates to almost $200 difference if you have a high school diploma versus if you don't have a high school diploma, on a weekly basis across the country on average. It's much more drastic if you compare a college degree versus a diploma, but that's kind of the high school. Now, where do you value the high school diploma versus this? Is it a high school diploma that you get from homeschooling?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you get a high school
I don't even
diploma.
know
Like
okay.
I just say, hey, kid, here's your diploma.
Nice. Okay. It's love, mom.
Right? It says like administrator.
Nice.
You just sign it. Yeah. No, it's true though. That's what it is. Versus, and some people, one of the big like myths is like, oh, you're a homeschooler, you have to prove, so go get a GED. Do not. If anyone's listening and you're a homeschooler, do not get a GED like if you've been homeschooled, because GED basically says I did not get a diploma, therefore I'm doing this. A high school homeschool, most states have like you have to have done this many years of this, or at least you've gotten an education, then you get your diploma. And my thought for my family is you're all going to go to some kind of higher education. You need a diploma to do that. So try it for a year. So we told our kids, try it for a year, try something, any program for a year, and, see what happens. Because for us, it hasn't been, they learn all this stuff in these great schools. My daughter started in nursing, and then she was like, I got to get a degree in something because I'm running out of time. What can I cobble together? And it turned out to be like communications or something with media. Now she's in sales. The point is not the degree. It was the connections that she made while at the institution. And I think really, if you take the dollar amount of what you earn, yes, there's this kind of paper ceiling, which I've encountered. I do not have my college degree. I did not finish my undergrad. And I've been turned down for jobs where I have literally created the thing that the 19-year-old kid is doing that you know what I'm saying? Like there's that need not apply. That's very frustrating. But more than that, it's that community. My kids are constantly tapping the people that they met at college for opportunities. I mean, it's a kind of bubble of, it's that kind of, you were talking earlier about the money. I mean, what would one person who could get you a slightly better job be worth a week? Or one person who could, because it is who you know. The world is all about who you know. And I don't think you need to go to Stanford or Yale. The people that are like, I'm going to mortgage my house so my kid could go to Stanford because it's who you know. It's not who you know at Stanford. It's who you know. And there's a lot of small communities with great money-making endeavors going on right now, especially in agriculture, technology. You don't need to go to Stanford to know people in those fields.
Right.
It's just, but I do think you need to know someone.
So do your kids, how have they expressed anything? How do they feel as far as being prepared for college? Was it a whole new experience or something they're like, no, I think I was, handle this, or?
I'm laughing because they're also different how they handle it. I think my daughter was really frustrated. She's like, there are kids that don't know how to do laundry. And there are kids that don't know how to, pump gas. And there are kids that can't cook eggs.
The basics.
I think for her, she was very much, and I don't think that's a homeschool thing as much as it is like a just parenting
Grow
thing.
up with
But if
6
a kid
kids
is in
versus
school,
1 kid. Yeah, that's different.
If you're in a school all day long and you ride a bus and you're not putting gas in your own car and you're never cooking a meal, why would you learn that? And then you're just like 3 months before your kid goes to college, we're going to teach you all the things. I mean, that doesn't work. My son was more, I can't believe, and this is really funny because we'd go on these tours at these colleges and the parents would say, we want to see where the kids are sleeping. And there's just your standard concrete jail cell dorm, right? With the bunk beds. And they haven't changed in 30 years. But the kids are like, in the tour, the parents are like, oh, I will not have my child sleeping in such, impoverished. And my kids are going, I get the whole side to myself, my
they've
own
come from
closet. Right? You get it. I know. Big family.
This is
right?
probably more of a large family versus small family, because even some of those things you said, I was like, man, my son cannot cook to save his life. I've tried everything, and the kid just doesn't know anything.
Right. But homeschoolers tend to be a little bit larger families, or the parents, in order to be able to be home with them, someone is likely an entrepreneur or in a situation where they have an office at home. There's a lot of like taking phone calls under the basement stairs and just kind of working through it. I think my kids are more than ready of like the living in college. I think what they didn't understand is we have to sit through this thing and do this very like a lot of red tape and a lot of bureaucracy. And that was, I think, the
which
part.
one do they fear more, the dean or mom? That's really the...
They fear financial aid. No, they're worried that their forms aren't going to get processed. The whole...
The bureaucracy. They didn't have any bureaucracy at home, and now all of a sudden there's what Mark Twain said, never let school get in the way of your education. So now there's school. They were just getting education. Now they're faced with this whole institution of school. I mean, I could definitely see that coming out. Now, you talked about your kids going to college, the value of basically high school and what is it, and that you've clearly made the decision that you think you're a better suit to prepare your kids for college than the public education system. Have you thought about any of these? And this is more just policy. You're a voter. You support things in lots of ways. Have you thought anything about just policies around the idea of maybe trade schools versus a high school, and allowing kids to go into not so much learn a general education, but actually learn a trade for those who don't go on to go to college? Males are tending not to go to college anymore. It is now dominated by mostly women. And so it's one of those things, as the population is changing and declining, we're going to see schools have to change in lots of ways. And I know if Ethan was here, in Australia, they have this where in high school you can somewhat start trade schools. Anything like that come of interest, especially I know in Nebraska, where there's quite a few trades you could find. We had one we talked about out of high school. If you left high school, you get a job paying $95,000 a year if you were to take up welding.
Yeah, definitely. My father was a welder. They farmed, but he welded during the winter months for extra money. We actually did, when we had our 5 boys, my husband and I are like, we're going to get some tradesmen out of this deal. They're going to come back on the break. They're going to do our electricity and so far it has not worked out. You're
going to be a doctor. You're going to be a lawyer. I need an accountant. I need a welder.
We've got, we've got so far ministry,
Oh dear. Oh dear.
art,
Oh
and
no.
therapy.
Now you gotta.
But we've made
You're gonna end up with the musician. You
yeah.
dug a hole.
We're like, but you can do GIS technology as your minor, or you can do ASL as a minor, or something that's more like, I don't want to say like skills based, but something where it differentiates you somehow from, because the odds you're going to go into whatever it is you get an undergrad degree in are very low, especially liberal arts. It's more of a foundation and again, the connections. But we did want our kids to do trades, and
So
for
if
a
that
couple
was
reasons.
an option where instead of homeschooling you
Yeah.
could pick a trade school, do you think you would have more gotten into a public version of a trade school?
You know, I don't think it's the what they learned that was as important as the how they learned to learn. Which, if at the end of the day, my kids couldn't come home with like I have a problem and I need to learn to solve it. And I have learned about history and philosophy and math and the building blocks of science, how my body worked and nutrition and all this stuff so that I can make really well-informed decisions. Um, I wouldn't want it. I think that there's plenty of time in the day, though, to add something like that on top. And we've seen that. I mean, there's no reason why they couldn't also go to the community college and take the welding classes. And we do have like CNC machine,
just so I understand,
different things.
You're really saying that as they're growing, they're in such a prime of their life, like how they learn is important, and that part is what's missing out of public education, where you can help them learn how to learn. But then on top of that, there's lots of ways that the public world could screw them up, but they've got that foundation.
Yeah. That, and I love the idea of like the Plato plumber, right? The guy who's working on your plumbing, but also could tell you if you get into an argument about, where communism came from, he's not going off of something
plumbers
he read
make
on
quite
Facebook.
a bit now, so they're in high demand. Right?
So he should be able to, to live and work in society, be able to make decisions, because it's not just about the money, right? At the end of the day, your body's going to wear out. You're not going to, and I think with the trades, we have to be fair. A lot of people in the trades are making their lifetime's earnings up front, because they're not going to be 80 years
old. Like sales, where
doing that.
When you're young,
unless they're
young and attractive, you bring it in, but that's going to phase, and you're not going to be able to sell a house anymore.
Gotcha. And they work hard, and their knees go out, and they're for the people that think the trade life is like the sweet life. It's a shorter education. You're in demand, you have job security, you make good money. But I don't see a lot of those guys once they get to be a certain age. It's hard. There's a reason you get paid all that money to get up on that giant hole in the middle of winter and turn everyone's power back on. It absolutely sucks. A lot of the time. You have to really be geared for that. And I think there are just some kids that just aren't geared for that too. But if you are, I think a homeschool education with a trade component is great. And then separately, I think if our public schools could go back to offering that, that would be best. I think we'd see a lot, maybe fewer kids have to leave the public school system, because there's some meaning and purpose in building things. And we have these trades that are just suffering because we don't have the young bodies to fill them. And the best way to get a kid excited about something is to let them try it. So I think both can be true.
Nice. Is there a way, I mean, because you've sort of bounced around. I do want to pry into like, what do you not like about the public school? And you've clearly said that you think that in the earlier days you can, fine tune it better. Is there ever a time where you think you would say, okay, if they finally did this, I might trust the public school to teach my children or something?
No.
No.
And it's not that there's a book in the library that's obscene, and it's not that, we're seeing more teachers in sex crimes against students.
That's kind of the state grooming argument, right? Where they're like, they're teaching our kids all to be, on the spectrum of gender.
Yeah, it's not any of that. So if you found like the absolute best group of people and you brought them all together and you said, I would still say that my kids were shocked when one of their public school friends raised their hand in an event and said, I would like to go to the bathroom now. And my kids looked at that kid and went, did that kid just ask to go to the bathroom? And I said, yes. And they said, why?
Institutionalized.
And I said, because that is what the purpose of the school is to, and this isn't like, tinfoil hat. This is go back to the history of the school. It's a lot like,
a lot like prison.
The history of Sunday school too, right? Is that a lot of it was like take these poor kids off the streets and give them a way to function.
Oh, I see.
We didn't have a problem, except we just needed nice, compliant workers to go do the thing and do as they're told.
So you see public school as a conditioning, not this isn't grooming. It's conditioning for.
Well, the fathers of public school, right, realized we had a societal need to have people that could work in these factory conditions, and it solved a problem. But my family doesn't exist to solve someone else's problem.
Well, let me.
I think.
Oh, go ahead.
There's a lot of great things that can come from schools with community and different things, but at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to me.
So, do you feel that education is something that is a societal problem that we all have to address, or it sounds like you think it's more of an individual? Like, not everyone needs an education.
I think education is an opportunity that everyone is capable of grabbing to their own ability, but that the things we have in place now are easy to take and they may not necessarily bring you to that full potential. I think an example is, we just had like the food stamp thing. That was all anyone talked about. Oh, they're getting rid of food stamps and blah, 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 right? And people were losing their minds. And the things I saw on my feed were like, get some rice, get some beans, cook. And people were like, you want me to what? Cook rice? And I was like, wow, we've been cooking rice. Like, rice is pretty tasty.
Rice and beans.
A lot of people around the world eat it. It's not like this, like, it shocked me.
Not everything comes in Cheeto flavor. Is that what you're implying?
Well, and think about it. The biggest thing about COVID, why people were upset with schools shutting down, wasn't that their kids weren't learning.
Breakfast and lunch.
It was breakfast and lunch. So public schools have not been about education for a lot of families for a long time. They are the system we exist in to live. And for some people, I think, that's just how it's going to be. But to pretend like it's about reading, how many decades are we going to be okay with like 30% of graduates being able to read before we go, maybe this isn't about learning.
And even lower
maybe this isn't
STEM.
about education.
Yeah.
If this was a product that we bought, to an air conditioning unit that burnt my house down, we would go, you know what? I really don't think this is an air conditioning unit. I think this is something else. And so I think we're calling a lot of these educational products something else. They're not. So unless you can completely revamp the way schools are to be more individualized, more tutor-based, more kind of like what we saw in other countries before this
sounds like you're almost saying if there was a higher rate of competition inside the schools where it did allow for opportunities versus teaching the bottom. And I know there's been some variations of this. For instance, charter schools have come in, and some of the charter schools have said, this is not a right to be here. You have to apply to be here. It's exclusive, and we're only bringing kids in who want to be here. If you're disruptive, you're out. And so they've had the right, they've had the ability now to do, kind of competition. We have private schools, and private schools definitely, for the most part, do this. Sometimes you can pay a little extra and have an obnoxious kid in there. But private schools are not cheap by any means, but they are definitely a way of weeding out. Private schools are, however, expensive. So you can't really say it's a fair distribution of opportunity, because it's really a fair distribution of kids who are wealthy enough to afford $20,000 to $60,000 a year in tuition, which is what it's costing now. And, that's an entirely different question because those kids are probably going to go on to, cash in their trust fund. And I'm talking about my kids, unfortunately, but they're able to do things a lot of kids aren't there. So when you talk about the education as a whole, charter schools were one of these. And then there's this kind of mixture, which is the voucher system. And the voucher system being that instead of supporting a charter school or a private school or a public school, there's the idea that I pay a lot of property taxes in many states, so a lot. And of all of the property taxes, I now only have one daughter who's about to graduate, and I will continue to have to pay property taxes. And that's part of the educational system. I do think, we need to provide education and find something. So that is a fact, which means anyone who has a child and, a school-age child will have access to those funds, sort of, right? They have access to the funds in the sense that I have paid them and none of my kids are going to school there. Elderly people who there are about to be a lot and fewer children from population growth are going to be paying into it, and not as near as many children there. So in Texas, they recently just passed the voucher bill. I think it's SB 7. And it now allows, it'll really start next year in 2026, but it'll allow, it starts on income. So you have to get qualified on income, and there's a few, but anyone can apply. It's $10,000 for private school, which means it would really only pay for, in some cases, a third or a fourth of what the cost of private school is. But homeschoolers are in there, and they will get $2,000, which I thought was interesting, that it's not near as much. They recognize that school's expensive, but they don't recognize that it's all that much. But there's now states who are starting to support homeschool. So this is almost the flip side of what you were saying before, where a lot of them are institutionalized, going there for breakfast. This is now taking public money and now using it and saying, all right, well, we're going to educate ourselves, but don't we have a right to some of that money? So I'd love your take on that.
Oh, it's so messy, and I'll tell you why. Because I have some lovely friends that are so anti-voucher.
Wait, are these like bless your heart friends, or are these actually lovely friends?
No, these are actually very lovely, like amazing friends that are with the shekels come the shekels mindset, right? If you take something from the government, it's just a matter of time before they say you can't do this. And this is the slippery slope. But to them, I say, if you're we live in, unfortunately, this weird place where we say education is a right, but really what we live is education is a demand. I can't not educate my child. I will go to jail. You cannot tell the state what you're going to do for education, or you will go to jail. If you miss more than 20 days, I think it is for any reason whatsoever in some schools, they will come to CPS will come to your house. Doesn't matter if your
Texas
kid's
is
sick.
10 days because they only get paid if the kids are going to school.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
They will take your children away from you. And so we can't pretend that, it's this thing where if we take the money, we're playing with the government. Education is not what we say it is. We have compulsory attendance, and as long as we have compulsory attendance where I can go to jail for not educating my kid, then I also should not be expected to pay for all of that. Because you could throw me in jail for if I don't do a good enough job, right? If I don't feed my child and my child starves to death, you can help me out with some food stamps potentially, right? Or I can go to a food bank. But education, we're like, you're going to go to jail, but if you don't like this thing, too bad. I feel like it's only right if we live in a society that says I can go to jail for not doing something, you at least give me some of my own money back to be able to do it in a way that fits, especially if we can say, well, this is a conflict to my First Amendment right, free speech, freedom of religion, whatever. We're going to a school that's explicitly teaching something that's against my freedom of religion, but I can't leave or I go to jail. And we want to argue about whether I can have $2,000. I think the argument has been framed wrong by some very well-meaning, lovely, faith-based people who have fought hard to get homeschooling rights, and I understand the fear. I think we have to watch it. I think we have to be mindful that government does tend to pull away rights when they give money, but to pretend like it's not just abhorrent that you can go to jail for not sending your kid to school, because look, we don't have busing systems in areas anymore because we don't have enough kids and we can't hire bus drivers. So now I have to drive my kid to school. That's a tax on people that don't have cars. So maybe that $2,000 should be so that, I can drive my kid to some. We expect a lot of parents. We criminalize them if they don't do it. And then we go, but we don't want you to have any money because they might take away your rights. It's a silly conversation, I think. I understand where they're coming from. I love the vouchers personally, and as long as we keep an eye on it, I think.
Do you know
I think
where
we can
the
make it work.
oldest voucher program in the country is?
The colleges,
Washington,
the
D.C.
Pell Grants. Oh yeah,
Washington,
and I
D.C.
also think
operates the longest, oldest, and I think the most generous. It's $12,000 that they pay out
wow.
for private schools. So yes, they made
Okay.
sure Congress made sure all of them were taken care of, but the rest of the states are still trying to figure it out. So.
And we have Pell Grants and subsidized loans and all this other stuff, and I don't know why we have to act like K through 12 is special or different. I don't know. I see a lot of kids that could really. They're struggling. They're inner city. They're being bused to schools and spending their days on buses. And they have parents that want to teach them at home. And $2,000 would just be like a lifeline. I'm not going to tell them. I'm not going to tell them no. I want I want families to have some flexibility here. Take a breather. Have a little bit of some breathing room. I'm okay with it. I
think it's great. Lindsay, this has been fascinating. Will you wrap us up? Give us a little word to those who might be listening to this on their own reckoning and considering homeschooling, but then tell people where they can find you. I know you've got a website and some other stuff.
So my big thing is if you're thinking of homeschooling or you're doing homeschooling and you're around anyone that makes you feel bad about anything, your choice of books, your choice of activities, how
Wait
you
a minute.
do it,
It's my
when you
kids
do it.
that make me feel bad. Where do I go?
Yeah.
We need one for parents.
I would say don't be around those people. There are 100,000 flavors of homeschooling. It's like Baskin Robbins, and there is someone out there who's doing it in a way that will respect you and your values, and you just need to find those people. And you can find me at linseyknerl.com. And my book, Homeschool Hacks, How to Give Your Kid a Great Education Without Losing Your Job or Your Mind, is available where books are sold. And I am also happy to talk to anyone who just needs like a little encouragement. We all could use encouragement. I won't judge, I promise. So that's my promise.
And what's your website again?
linseyknerl.com.
linseyknerl.com. So you heard it here, folks. Hostile Dysfunction, where we unpack the wild, interconnected chaos shaping our world, including the population's decline and all the reasons for it. We're here with Linsey Knerl, and it has been a fascinating conversation. For those who don't know, this is our season finale, and we'll be back up at next year. So Ethan and I both said if we could do this for a year, we'll kick it up a notch for next year. So we are finally going to bring in some music and some other things that we don't have if you've listened to the show previously. So again, Lindsay, thank you so much for joining us, and looking forward to following you. We'll see you.